So if you've ever looked into moving to Southeast Asia, you've probably already discovered a cruel reality. Finding a place is easy, but actually finding a place that lets you stay long term can be a bit of a challenge. I mean, one country wants proof of income, another wants proof of your savings, and a third wants so much paperwork you're wondering if you're still applying for a visa or if you're running for public office. But there is one country that seemed to miss the memo of making immigration as complicated as possible, and that's Cambodia. Because it's quietly been building a reputation for actually having one of the easiest long-term visa systems in this entire region. So in this video I'm looking at whether it really does deserve the name of Southeast Asia's visa cheat code. And spoiler alert, you may be surprised by just how easy it can be. So let's start with the first section of this video. Now let's talk about visa runs / border runs, whatever you want to call them. Because this is the biggest nemesis of many of the visas in this region really. And if you spent any time travelling Southeast Asia already, you've probably already heard the phrase visa run. Which can sound exciting at first, I know, but in reality, it's usually a long bus ride, a queue at a border crossing, a few confusing forms you have to fill out, and several hours of your life you'll never get back. Plus, nothing says living the dream quite like waking up at 4 AM to renew your permission to stay in a country. And the problem is that many countries in this region make long-term stays surprisingly complicated. Rules change, new requirements appear out of nowhere, and suddenly you're collecting paperwork like you're trying to complete a bureaucratic Pokemon collection. So for retirees, digital nomads and long-term expats, visa runs quickly go from being an adventure to being a recurring annoyance. And another cost altogether. Because if you don't want to do the cheapest option and spend most of the day on a sleeper bus, then you end up spending a few $100s on a short holiday to make the most of this visa run, which is a cost that many expats forget to budget for and don't really want to do anyway, because the holiday they actually want isn't normally to the nearest border town in a neighbouring country. And that's why so many people get excited when they discover a country that makes the whole process much easier for them to stay long term without having to do regular border runs. Now let's move on to the next section, the visa nightmare. Because living in Southeast Asia can be absolutely amazing, but the visa situation? Not always. You need proof of income, proof of savings, proof that you exist, and probably proof that your great-grandparents existed too. And just when you think you've submitted everything, someone asks for another document you've never even heard of. Then there are constant changing of the rules. 1 month a visa is easy to get, the next month there's a new requirement, a new fee, or a whole new online system that somehow makes everything more complicated. Plus, expats often spend hours reading forms, watching YouTube videos, and comparing conflicting advice, which will make it feel like you've got a whole new full-time job that is simply figuring out how to keep living where you already are. Now, let's move on to Cambodia's visa system itself, which often feels like it was designed by somebody who looked at all the complicated visa systems here and said, what if we just didn't do any of that? Because compared to many of its neighbouring countries, Cambodia's long-term visa process is refreshingly straightforward. Instead of endless paperwork and bureaucratic obstacle courses, the process is often surprisingly simple. That's one of the biggest reasons Cambodia has become so popular with retirees, digital nomads and long-term expats. While other countries can leave you constantly worrying about your next visa renewal, Cambodia tends to be far more relaxed. And it's not completely hassle-free, but compared to some of the visa horror stories you'll hear elsewhere in this region, it can feel like you've discovered a visa cheat code for living in Southeast Asia. So what do you actually need? This is where many newcomers are pleasantly surprised, especially when you use a visa agency, because then all you need to do is hand over your passport, provide a passport photo if needed, fill out a basic form depending on the agency, pay the fee itself, and then wait. And that's it. No marathon visits to the government offices, no stacks of paperwork to fill out, and no desperate Googling at midnight trying to figure out which document you've forgotten. So if you've lived in Southeast Asia for a while now, you've probably dealt with complicated immigration systems, but that isn't really a thing here. Because handing a visa agent your passport and money for the visa, and then being told to come back in a week, feels almost suspicious. Yet that's one of the reasons Cambodia has earned a reputation for having one of the easiest long-term visa systems in Southeast Asia. Because that's all you do. In my experience, I literally did just that. I waited for a WhatsApp text to tell me when to pick my passport back up, once my visa had been approved obviously. And it's worth mentioning, for the agency I used, I got told if I got denied for whatever reason, I'd get a full refund, which is just another win really. So let's move on to the next section, how Cambodia compares to the other countries, because especially when you compare it to its neighbours and other countries in this region, Cambodia tends to be one of the more straightforward places when it comes to long-term stays. While countries like Thailand, Vietnam and Indonesia all have their own visa options. They often come with more requirements, more paperwork, or more frequent and stricter rule changes. And although Cambodia's system isn't perfect, it's genuinely easier to understand and easier to manage once you've settled into the country. I mean, that's why so many expats end up looking at Cambodia after getting frustrated elsewhere. And when your choices are spending weeks gathering documents or simply renewing your visa through a local agent, the appeal becomes pretty obvious. Cambodia may not always win the tourism competition, but when it comes to visa simplicity, it's surprisingly hard to beat. And moving on to the final section here, the biggest catch. And of course there's a catch. There always is. But just because Cambodia's visa system is easy, doesn't make it free. Visa extensions can add up over the years, and immigration rules can change just like they can anywhere else. The system may be simple, but it's still something you need to budget for and keep an eye on. The other thing to remember is that an easy visa doesn't automatically mean Cambodia is the right place for everyone. You still need to like the climate, the culture, the infrastructure, and the lifestyle. A visa can make moving somewhere else easier, but it can't make you actually enjoy living there. Think of the visa as the easy part, to the real question of whether Cambodia itself is a good fit for you. And now, on to final thoughts. I mean, at the end of the day, Cambodia's visa system isn't exciting, but that's exactly why people love it. Plus, I think it's fair to say nobody moves to the other side of the world just because they're passionate about immigration paperwork. People want to spend their time exploring, working, or just chilling, and enjoying life in general, not standing in lines and filling out paperwork. And Cambodia makes that process easier than most countries in this region. That's one of the reasons Cambodia continues to attract a huge range of individuals. And while other countries often seem determined to test your patience, Cambodia's approach can feel refreshingly practical. And it's not perfect, but it's often simple enough that you can stop thinking about visas and finally get on with your life. Of course, an easy visa shouldn't be the only reason you move to a country. You still have to enjoy the food, the culture, the weather, and most of all, the lifestyle. But fortunately for many expats, Cambodia offers plenty of reasons to stay beyond just the paperwork. I mean, to name a few, there's extremely friendly people, an affordable cost of living, and a super relaxed atmosphere that are all what convince people to stick around for years. So if you've been searching for a place in Southeast Asia where staying long term doesn't require a degree in bureaucracy, Cambodia deserves a serious look. It may not be the flashiest destination in the region, but when it comes to making life easier for long-term expats, it might just have the best visa deal around. And that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next video.